Welcome to another edition of Alpha 101. Today we're joined by Kenny Roache. Kenny, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So first off, let me say off the bat that it's a real pleasure to have you because you're someone I respect a lot. You're someone who's been a supporter of Alpha, but you always come to the games to watch. And you're one of the few people in this community that I've talked to that really understands what Alpha is trying to accomplish. We're doing things a little differently than probably what's accustomed here. And you have my utmost respect in that aspect and how much you support Alpha. And I really want to thank you for that. And that's why it's such an honor to have you here today as well.
The privilege is all mine. Thank you. Thanks, mate.
So, you're a man who's greatly involved in the basketball community here in Wellington. You're the director of Wellington College, the athletic director. Is that true?
The chairman of Wellington College basketball.
Oh, that's even higher, isn't it?
I don't know if it's higher, but I'm involved in Wellington College basketball, certainly.
Yep.
Yeah,
And you have two boys who are involved in a lot of leagues and basketball as well. And you're an avid fan of basketball.
Absolutely.
So, first thing I want to get to is, how did basketball enter your life? How did your love for the sport come to be?
Ooh, good question. So growing up, I think just like most kids, particularly out of Porirua where I grew up and things like that, it was rugby or rugby league. Basketball at the time was a sport played by a very select few, I think, because they knew about ball and things like that, so they played. Didn't play ball at high school at all. I was terrible at it. Started picking it up a little bit after high school, just playing just with church and also with just a few friends and things like that. Again, it was pretty trash at it. It was pretty rubbish. But I think like most team sports, it's enjoying that camaraderie and enjoying just being with your mates and things like that. The real love for basketball came with the boys. First with Ethan, who picked up ball on his mum's side. It just runs rampant in the family and things like that. And there's some super talented players there, and so Ethan picked it up. And now obviously Iverson's playing ball as well. But yeah, Ethan was very, very fortunate to make the Wellington under-13 team as a 9-year-old, and so development player, still had a lot to learn and things like that, but very fortunate to have had the opportunity to just run with the rep team and things like that. And then 2 years later, I was able to coach his team. Probably not very well, but yeah, I think that there was where the love of the game really started to grow. And I think more than anything, just like most parents, it's you see your kids enjoying something and then you become invested in it and you want to be more involved in it, however you can. And obviously now Iverson's at high school and he's playing for Wellington College, and when Ethan started high school, I joined the Wellington College basketball committee. I was never going to coach because I don't think I would have been a great coach for at college level certainly, or high school level. And so I'd been in the committee, and I'd always promised Iverson as well that I'd get involved in some way in his basketball. Not as the chairperson, but yeah, it's where I'm at the moment, and very fortunate to be able to hopefully have some positive influences on the kids, right, and in their enjoyment and their experiences. So yeah, and then you get to like the ability to watch them play outside of high school, and you see them become better people because of the people they're involved with in basketball. And like, yeah, I cannot stress that enough. We've been very blessed as a family to have come across and met some amazing families and some amazing people, and certainly Ethan and Iverson have built great friendships through basketball, and we've been benefactors of those friendships because all of the kids that have played ball with have got parents as well, and so socially it's nice to be able to actually catch up with them and just listen and learn to some of their stories and some of their experiences and things. So yeah, it's been a journey, but this is where we are today.
Yes, I know we've talked about this off camera quite a few times, but the support you coming to every game, even social leagues.
Yeah, yeah.
And I see you come for Alpha games, watching them, both Iverson and Ethan play. You're one of the few parents outside, I can only think of two parents who usually come all the time. It's you and Paul Miller.
Paul Miller, sorry, yeah.
And I think that's great because, like I told you, when I played basketball, I never had my parents come because obviously they were always working. And I think, I don't know how it actually feels. Ethan and Iverson can actually attest to this, how it feels, but I think it's a great thing for parents to come, even if it's just social, to come and support their child and watch them play basketball. How important is that to you to watch Iverson and Ethan play as much as possible?
I don't know if this is actually going to explain it the way that I hope it does, but I'll give it a go, and then maybe I'll stretch it out and expand a little bit more on it. So we have obviously teams that you have to pay to go and watch. I would rather pay money to go and watch Alpha League game and watch the boys play in a social league. And that's not to take away from the Saints or anything like that. It's because those are my kids.
Yeah.
They have been given an opportunity through Alpha and WBA to be able to actually just get out there and enjoy themselves, to meet and compete against some pretty talented athletes, and so for me, just being courtside and watching my kids enjoy and play a sport that they love, is amazing. And so like you, my folks don't come and watch my games as well, but for good reason,
yeah.
Right? And it's just the way that it is. And so for me, it's this might be getting a little bit, and I don't mean it to, but Ethan and Iverson, my life, that's basically what it is, and I will enjoy their company for as long as I'm allowed to, because I know that there will come a day where they will take off and they'll do their own things, and I'll be super proud of them for doing that kind of thing. And so until that moment comes, I just want to be involved in whatever it is that they do as often as I can. And basketball has been a great vehicle to be able to do that kind of thing, right? Ethan makes his way to and from games. He's very independent now, doing his own thing. But I get a feeling that post-game debriefs and chats and things like that, I get a sense that he's proud that we're still there courtside, despite the fact that he's now 23. Yeah. He's literally just organising his own sport and things like that. But again, I have to give him credit because he's involving Iverson and his teams as well and things like that. And so it's very rare that we have the opportunity to watch them both in the same team on the same court kind of thing. So yeah, as a dad, means the world to be able to actually enjoy watching my kids. Just enjoy what they're doing, and it could have been anything.
Yeah.
They've chosen basketball, and I love them for choosing basketball. But yeah, that's me. That's why I am courtside most of the time. And like I said, as with Paul, it's great opportunities to be able to meet other, parents who I imagine are doing the same thing. And it's not to say that parents who don't turn up to games aren't there because they don't want to watch their kids. We all have lives outside of this and things like that. But that's certainly why we're there all of the time. So.
That's great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned coaching.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. Can
you go back and tell us a little bit of your experience in coaching basketball?
Yeah, sure. So I was very fortunate to have two brother-in-laws who have been heavily involved in basketball from before I met their sister and things like that. And one of them had been on the coaching scene for a very, very long time, Mike. So he coached Sacred Heart, he coached rep basketball, he's won national championships. And so a real student of the game. If I was to liken him to any kind of NBA coach, I guess it'd be more like Pop, Greg Popovich, where a lot of it was finding the strengths in the individual and coming up with a game plan based on all you've got and things like that, as opposed to here's a game plan and things like that, and I'm asking you to either adjust the way that you play so that you fit the game plan and things like that. And so when I coached Ethan's under 13 basketball team, Mike was our assistant coach. He wasn't really, he was the head coach, I was just the face of it. And Fata, who is Mike's younger brother, my brother-in-law, he passed away a couple of years ago, things like that. He was our team manager, but he'd been the under 13 coach 2 years prior to that. And so it was the dream setup. Like, literally, I was the face of the team. I'd sent out communications, and I'd brought, I feel more than anything, the value that I had was bringing a group of parents together as well, and shared with them just how talented and gifted their kids are. The technical side of it certainly came from Mike, and so I learned a lot from him. We had a group of, and I still laugh because a lot of other coaches were shocked when we ran it against them. We had a group of 11 and 12-year-olds, and we were running triangle. And
really?
Offense. Yep. And
that's not an easy offense to run. Yeah.
Not at all. And so what I learned from both Mike and Fata was, even at an age group level, if you are able to articulate and break things down granularly enough, an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old would still be able to understand and pick that up. And it was this is what you do first, and then you add to it. This is what you do second, and then you add to that. And for me, the interesting thing was coaching has an amazing way of being able to flow onto other things in life and things like that, right? So I think about work, and it was very fortunate to have been in leadership roles where you are coaching others to do a specific role and things like that. And so absolutely use the same techniques and processes. I will share with you and teach you this part of your job, and then this, and then this, and this. And I'm sure it's not new, I'm sure it's but yeah, so for me, the coaching side of it was a great learning experience. I think one of the things that I did add as far as our coaching pool was the ability to sit and talk with the boys, and sit and talk with the parents and things like that. I think, and you said it absolutely well, coaches won't always give you confidence, but they can certainly strip it away from you.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I was very mindful of, and I learned that in a very hard way as well with Ethan, was we have, as coaches, an amazing opportunity, and it doesn't matter what age group. You could be coaching a 5-year-old, you could be coaching a 25-year-old. Whenever you have an opportunity to influence how somebody feels about an experience that you're offering them and things like that, all I can encourage coaches to do is to never take that for granted. There'll be times where you have to have coming to Jesus conversations and things like that, but there are ways that you can have it. That's what we say to Ethan and I and all of the time. It's not what you say, it's how you say it sometimes. And so that's the approach that we took with our coaching team. And I'm super proud because in our draft class we had Ethan, his cousin Isaac, who went on to play for the Tall Blacks, and he's at Dartmouth at the moment, so he's finishing off his final year of college in the US. Dane Samuel was in our team as well, and so obviously he's playing New Zealand, he's playing Saints, he's played NBL in Australia as well, and he went to the Philippines, I think, and played college ball over there. And then we had other players like Puhi, who was Dane's older brother. We also had Justin Espanas, who was one of the all-time best defenders I think I've ever had the privilege of watching. So he went to St. Pat's Town, and he's the real epitome of you don't have to be tall to be good, And then we also had Gabe Carr, who was our court general. He had a great basketball IQ. There were other players who might have been faster, might have been more athletic, might have been able to shoot better and things like that. But Gabe certainly had a great knowledge of the game and things like that. And so, I was very blessed, I feel, that, I had this talented group of kids. We won regionals, went away to nationals, and got knocked out in the semis and things like that. And so, for me, the success came in actually seeing the kids enjoy the experiences. And I think that's what it is. It's just like, one of the things that I'm trying to encourage our coaches at Wellington College certainly is the opportunity to be able to give kids experiences is going to far outweigh and last a lot longer than a championship that you might win. That's just the icing on the cake. But if they can look back and actually love the fact that they represented Wellington College, then you've done your job well as a coach. So for me, that's the coaching. It's the what can you do to be able to encourage a young mind more often than not that you might be coaching to be as amazing as they can be. Otherwise, why have you selected them?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I loved how you brought up coaching is more than just basketball, because that was something I learned early when in my coaching career that I didn't quite understand maybe the first few years. But after that, you start understanding coaching is more than just X's and O's. It's just more what happens on the court. And what I try to tell people who want to go into coaching is that you're not just a coach, especially when you're dealing with university or younger.
Absolutely.
You can be a counselor.
Yeah.
Coach a counselor. You give advice.
Yeah.
You're dealing with highly impressionable minds,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching them social skills, how to get along with your teammates if you don't get along with them. At least respect them, even if you don't get along with them. And it also sports pours into their personal lives in terms of how to deal with adversity, how to deal, like social skills again. And I think a lot of coaches, in my personal view, don't understand that, especially when they're first starting out. And it's a big task.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility to be a coach. And I just love how you brought that up, that, it's just more than just basketball.
I think it's as you say, I think a lot of particularly young and new coaches go into it with they see what they want at the end, which is a championship.
Yeah.
But it's not always to see what's immediately in front of you, and that's a group of anywhere from 8 to 12 young, like as you say, university, college or younger minds who actually just need somebody who believes in them and things like that. And it's how do you tailor your approach, because it can't be one blanket approach to everyone and things like that, right? And that's just one of the things I think as a coach it's important to understand, and all I can hope for is that coaches or anyone in a position to be able to influence young minds appreciates that, because even what you say to someone could be the world of difference.
Yes.
They could go away feeling absolutely amazing, and all you've done is just taking the time to sit and have a chat with them. But yeah, it's the championship, I believe, is a byproduct of creating the culture. And that comes down to the X's and O's. I think, as you said, right, they'll sort themselves out.
Yeah.
It's just actually appreciating that you have a young mind in front of you that you can influence in a really positive way and things like that. And at the end of the day, if you do that, the X's and O's actually probably won't always be the most important thing that you achieve. So.
You can't talk to each player the same way.
No. Yeah.
And each person has a different personality, and you have to adapt.
Absolutely. We wouldn't do that in our work life.
Yeah.
And so why would we expect a group of young people to actually receive messages in the same way and things like that? And so
It's one of the great things of coaching. It's a mutual learning experience for the coach and for the players.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
So Wellington College, you guys are in the Premier.
Yeah, they're in the Prems,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's up to obviously the management team and the actual players to get it and put it out there on the court and things like that. And so yeah, I'm positive about the season ahead, and like I said, I don't mean to make it sound like it's a real defeatist kind of comment, but I think when I think about young men in particular and the expectations that we put on them as athletes, all I hope for and pray for is that at the end of the season, what they will remember the most are the experiences that they were afforded as the premier team of the school, playing in the premier grade in Wellington College, College Sport Wellington, and then being able to go to regionals, and Wellington College, with a lot of other high schools, have this amazing thing called traditionals, and like every year, like for example, they'll play against Pumps North boys, and so Pumps North will either come down or will go up. They'll do the same thing with New Plymouth Boys High, and so yeah, it's the experiences I think that I really hope the boys come away with and enjoy, because that's what they'll remember the most.
Yep.
You know, and that could be a real poor experience if we haven't actually delivered things very well, or it could be amazing experiences regardless of whether we win a championship or not, and that's what I hope they actually come away with. So yeah, so in the Prems, yeah, tough first game of the Prems, but they got the W, and we'll take that on the score sheet and on the table. W's W.
You asked me a great question before we started us off camera. What was my high school experience? So I'm gonna reflect that question onto you.
Sure.
What is the typical New Zealand, I guess Wellington high school or college, as you guys call it here, experience in terms of basketball? What's it like?
I think, so if I go way back, which is when I was at high school, it was, we had some super talented players, maybe 2 or 3 years ahead of before I got to senior age. And my understanding was Mana College was very competitive in the local scene.
By the way, it's great to see them. They're competitive now, in the last few years, haven't they?
Yeah. And that, so what had happened last year and the year before then was exactly what had happened when I was maybe a year 10. Back in the days we called it 4th form, and then 5th form. That's a really golden day. But we had a lot of really gifted and really talented players. So Mana College is located by the Mormon Chapel out in Porirua, or in Alston, and so a lot of the locals would go to Mana College and things like that, and like they were just ballers. They really were. A lot of them had gone away to Church College and spent, I think, some of their schooling there, and then they came back and finished their high school, and so we had a really competitive team and things like that. And some of them were just all the way through and stuff. So certainly by the time that me and my mates, and man, I hope they don't watch this because this is going to reflect really poorly. By the time we got to 7th form or year 13, we were trash. We were terrible, not competitive at all. But then I think what I remember thinking as a 17-year-old in my last year of high school and things like that is how much I admired what was going on in the city, because there was always the McKevity Shield, for example, which is the athletics competition between Rangata College, Wellington College, St. Pat's Town and St. Pat's Silverstream. So they had this huge competition. And basketball was the same. It was like all of the talent, and you know, if I'm being truthfully honest, all of the resource was also in the city and things like that, because that's where most of the affluent, you know, students were and schools were and things like that. And so, you know, it wasn't easy to be as competitive when you were coming from a school where rugby and rugby league, softball even back in the days, was so much more popular than basketball. And so we had a gym. It wasn't very well maintained, but we had a gym. But I feel like the landscape has changed a lot. I mean, basketball is now the most popular sport in all schools, and for good reason. You know, it's well, at high school level, it's a lot more accessible than it's ever been. I'm not sure if that's the same case in rep level, but yeah, and I think when you talk about the Manas and then the Tawa colleges, and even Newlands and Onslow, and even you know, seeing some of the other schools just be a lot more competitive. I think there's a much more even playing field. A lot of these kids these days are playing against each other on a regular basis, on a Friday night obviously, and then they're playing with each other, either in a club or rep basketball. But yeah, no, back in the days, it wasn't the most popular sport. It was definitely an exclusive crew that played, especially at Mana College and things like that. You'd almost already picked all the senior A's picked themselves basically. Yep. Yeah, and that's what it is. Whereas now, when we had trials, even last year in the middle of COVID, or in the middle of lockdown, for our seniors, there were 96 kids, I think, that trialled. Might not sound like a lot, but when you've only got 3 teams, someone's going to get cut. And people will argue that actually that's the best environment to be in. And so people got cut. Our juniors, we had over 100 and I think there was about 115 kids turn up. And so that's a really good sign, right? When you've got juniors, that many juniors wanting to play as well. And so, I think it's just a reflection on just how popular basketball is now. I didn't play. If I did, it wasn't very well.
How did you come into becoming the chairman of Wellington College?
Purely by accident. No. Nobody else put their hand up. No, actually, so Mel Young, who was the chairman prior to me, his young fella was finishing high school, and that's more often than not what happens is they're all volunteers and things like that. You put up your hand and you hope that you can influence the sport as positively as you can and things like that. And Mel did a great job. I got a call from Mike Morris, who's one of our coaches, and he said, "Hey, look, committee meeting, do you want to come along?" I said, "Yeah, I guess it is." I'd always said to Iverson, I'll get involved. This was last year. I'd get involved in some capacity and things like that. And again, it was just being part of the committee, I thought. And then Mel had read this amazing departure letter. And straight away it was just like, okay, so we need a new president. And Mike looks over at me and said, I was like, that's why you invited me. And it went quiet for a little while. And I think it wasn't so much I believed I was the right person for it, but it's if you've got an opportunity to be able to help influence great experiences for the kids that are playing, then that's kind of like where that all came about. Dave Keat, who is the sports director of all sports across Wellington College, is he's a huge fan of the sport, and so he's been great to have on the committee because he's got a direct link into college sport Wellington, and if there are questions that need to be asked, to ask on our behalf, and he's just a great supporter of the committee. So so certainly not a one-man show. Any success that we have is certainly because of all of the amazing other volunteers that are there and things like that. So we're very blessed, I feel, at Wellington College, and it's one of the things that you kind of hope becomes the norm. Like our coaches, like our senior A coach doesn't have any kids there, but he's determined. Tom Grice, he's committed to try and actually stay on for a few more years and build a program. Our junior A coach, Scotty Richardson, amazing coach. We are super blessed to have both of them. Scotty's an old boy of the school, so it's really nice to have him back. Same thing, he doesn't have a son there, so it's really nice to have that kind of dynamic, whereas you remove any, you're only coaching because your kid's in the team kind of thing, or you want your kid in the team. And then we've got Salwa Tofale, who's come back. He was the coach of the last Wellington College champion team and things like that, and he's taken on our senior Bs. And they're doing amazing things.
Yeah, that sounds like a great cast.
Yeah, so the stable that we have is actually legit. It's
So, probably a lot of people behind the camera watching this don't know that last interview, it got cut off. And so you might be wearing some different clothes in different environments.
Wardrobe changes, yeah.
So we had to continue this another day. But last time we left off is when you were talking about Wellington College, how you guys are starting the new program with new coaches and stuff like that, and you're introducing some of the coaches. So can you start again about what you guys are trying to accomplish at Wellington College.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You kind of think to yourself, this is amazing. How blessed are we as a program to have that type of caliber? What I love about them both, and certainly many of the other coaches that we have, is neither of them have sons at Wellington College. And so selfishly, as a chairperson, what I love is that we actually look like we have some really nice pieces in place where there's going to be longevity. And so there's going to be a couple of years, maybe even 3 or 4 years, where we'll have the same coaches available running the program. Added to that is we have Salvatore Fale, who's come back. He's our senior B coach. Again, another Wellington College old boy. And what I love about that is that his son left Cole, I think it's about 2 years ago now, maybe 3. And so he doesn't have anyone there as well. And so again, it's that for us, it's the blessing of having continued, leadership as far as coaching goes. And so we can build a program as opposed to, and there's nothing wrong with it because obviously it's all voluntary and things like that, as opposed to having, let's say, a mum or a dad coaching because their son's playing and things like that. And then as soon as their son leaves high school, they leave as well and things like that. And so this is what I love about what we've got at Wellington College. I think as far as stables go, we've got like the biggest depth, I believe, as far as the caliber of coaches that we have. But you look at someone like Stream and things like that, and Terry's been there forever and things like that. So he's built an amazing program, and that there is evidence of if you've got the same systems running year after year after year, and if they work, then you're obviously going to be a bit of a powerhouse and things like that. And so, Stream is definitely, as far as senior basketball goes, that's where everyone's actually aiming towards. And
that's
so,
a standard, eh?
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like Terry's done a lot of really, really good things, and he's been given the opportunity to actually build that program. So that's what we want to be able to do as well. And we've got amazing coaches, so that's the intention anyway. But yeah, and I think the biggest benefactors of it are obviously the players. Yeah. And that's what it's all about, right? If you're not here for the boys, then you're not here for the right reason and things like that. So yeah, quite fortunate to have the coaches that we have.
I think that's a great thing, because I know we've talked off camera about this. Is one of the things I don't like about high school basketball or college sport basketball, or college basketball, I should say, in Wellington. I don't know if it's like this around the country, but in Wellington, where you have coaches coming in for a year or two and just leaving, and it's important for a player to have that program, that system where they can just come in and follow it, and they know it's going to be there, they know the coach is going to be there for them, and stuff like that. In Wellington, it's different from the States, where you said it's voluntary to be a coach. In the States, you either have the athletic director or athletic or PE, physical education teacher, coach the basketball team, or if they have enough money, then they hire someone, a dedicated person to coach. How can that change in Wellington, where more schools have a structured system, like Terry has done with Silverstream, where he's been there for years, and obviously they're a good team year in, year out because of that. How can that change in Wellington? Or do you see it changing?
That's tough, because I think the history has been the volunteer community and things like that, right? So, and there are sometimes you have multiple teams and you're asking a parent to put up their hand to coach because you don't have coaches ready at the ready kind of thing. But I'm not sure exactly what the program is like in the US as far as high school basketball goes, whether there is you've got a group of kids and you trial for one team and one team only, whereas in Wellington you look at Cole, we've got 3 senior teams and 4 junior teams. And a lot of that is to try and actually make sure that we are we're acknowledging the growth of basketball, which is great, and we're trying to give as many athletes the opportunity to play as much as we can and things like that. But yeah, with that comes the who's going to actually coach these teams, and that's where we do often get parents putting up their hands to say, yeah, I'll do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that they've got experience in basketball. Certainly maybe not even in coaching and things like that. They may have played, but been lots of examples of great players not being great coaches and things like
Yeah.
that, right? And I think what's really important is coaching high school basketball is quite different, because there needs to be an appreciation of the young person that you've got. You can't, I believe at least, you can't just do a blanket rule across everyone and just think that everyone's going to respond the same way, because that's not the way that it works, kind of thing. Is there budgets for coaches? That would be the challenge, right? It'll be, and then how much of a budget would actually incentivize somebody coming from external, because you almost are in that situation of, can we give you enough money for you to have this as your full-time job for a period of time and things like that. And I think that's where the challenge is, schools. You look at Cole, I think the last count there were 1,700 boys at Cole. Rugby is still the #1 sport. And they've got a really good program at Cole as far as the rugby goes and things like that. They've got sponsorship and things like that, so that's all very well. I don't know if the coaches get paid in rugby. But then, I don't know, maybe it's the way that I look at it, and it's not entirely like good for business perhaps, but for me it's good for the kids.
Yeah.
It's, you want to be able to be as inclusive as possible. I look at our senior A's. You make that team, you're going to get all the glory and stuff like that, right? You go away to traditionals, everyone's expected to come and watch your games on a Friday night at ASB, and to be fair, we've had like some pretty good crowds turn up to Friday night games. But for me, it's they will always be looked after because of the status that they would naturally hold and things like that. For me, it's the other teams though, because you're representing your school, and you might not be at that particular grade, but you're still representing your school, and you should be proud about that. If you go back to the coaches and things like that, how do we actually bring in, and how do we incentivize, and how do we actually motivate coaches to say, I'm happy to commit my time to look after potentially not the senior A's or the junior A's and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's always going to be tough.
Okay.
I think the only way that you could probably do it is if you do just go to a one team and one team only, either one senior team and one junior team, and then you try and come up with a budget to say we want dedicated coaches to run those particular programs and things like that. And then I guess the thing for me, the challenge will always be, what do you do with all of the other athletes that are super keen about playing basketball? Do you just chuck them in a social league somewhere and things like that? But again, it then goes back to the intention is to run a program where you may not have made one of the junior teams, for example, but actually given the framework of this is the style of basketball that we play at Wellington College, if you work your ass off, there's no reason why you can't make the team next year, and then the senior team the following year, and then like who knows, you might actually become a starter in your last year of high school and things like that. And so I don't want to discount like kids. I know, I guess to be super successful, maybe it does need to be that cutthroat. I don't know if anyone's got the recipe right yet though, so it's hard to bring in coaches without the money. I think that's all it comes down to.
From it's a long time ago now, but from what I remember, playing basketball in high school, it was pretty cutthroat.
Yeah.
So we had 3 teams, the senior team,
Yeah.
and then the junior team,
Sure.
and then the junior B team. And if you didn't make any of those 3, tough luck. You find somewhere else to play basketball, and it was quite. I think it's more strict in the States, at least when I don't know if it's changed now, but here I feel like you can switch high schools quite easily, but in the States,
you shouldn't be able to.
and then where you're situating your address, you're allocated a zone to what school you can actually attend to academically, and then you have to play sports for that school. You can't play another sport for another school.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Like, I'm sure there'll be lots of people who will argue that actually maybe it just does need to be cutthroat for us to be super successful and things like that. Maybe it is. We stop doing the cotton wool stuff and actually go to the, if you're good enough, you'll make the team. If you're not good enough, then, you know, there's lots of other things that you could do. And I don't know if Wellington and then like more broadly the New Zealand basketball community is quite ready for that. You know, but do we get our best athletes playing ball? Yeah. If that happens, then yeah, absolutely. That would most definitely be the case, because just because you don't make a team this year, you still go back to you still have open runs and trials the following year and things like that. And if you've worked really hard, it doesn't mean that you won't make the team next year, kind of thing, right? So yeah, maybe that's what it is, and maybe it then becomes easier to be able to actually run those particular types of programs. Yeah, it's tough that going from school to school and things like that. I mean, like, in Wellington, and then like I might get offside with people on this, and I don't mean it to be, there is the real perception that there are schools who buy their players and things like that, right? And the thing for me is just like, well, I get it, if opportunities are being offered to kids and their families and things like that, who's going to say no to that, right? And so the challenge that we have is, what is it that we can do at Wellington College that keeps players there? And if part of that is actually being really proud about being part of this group of guys and this program that we're in, then that's cool. I'm not against anyone that takes their kids to try and actually provide them with the best opportunity at high school at all, because you only get one chance to do that as a parent, right? And so if that comes about by way of scholarship and you're playing ball for a different school, have fun, enjoy it, you know, that's all I can say, is make the most of it, because there'll be other kids, I assure you, that wish they had that same opportunity. They're just low-key with their parents in the background saying, no, I want to be where I am and stuff like that. And that's okay. That's okay. It is what it is, and you do the best that you can to try and provide a product where ultimately what we want is for our boys and girls, obviously, to enjoy the experiences that basketball has to offer, but accept that actually for you to be playing for the Queens or playing for the Saints or any other team for that matter, or eventually overseas and stuff like that, we probably need to do a better job of setting that standard.
Last we left you, the college sports season was just starting, and now we're 5, 6, 7 weeks into it.
I feel I think it's week 6.
Week 6.
So Cole, they're doing all right. They're hanging in there and stuff like that. Again, streams the team to run down, and like I think there's some real agreement out there that actually, you know, they're absolutely setting the standard, and it's the question now of who makes up the top 4 after that, or who makes up the, you know, the top 6 kind of thing.
Is it top 4 or top 6?
Well, they've changed the format, and so there are 10 teams in there. I think it is top 4 still, where you know, you have a playoff series and stuff like that, where I think one plays 4. I could be wrong. Could be completely telling you lies and stuff like that. But that was traditionally how it happened. 1 played 4, 2 played 3, and so there are some teams that are pretty nice. Like Cole played against Scots, and there was an amazing crowd there, which was really, really good. And it was a good game. You know, Scots, you know, they've got some super talented athletes. They understandably are still going through the Mac's not around anymore and things like that, where they expected him to be their coach this year, and obviously things would have been very, very different and things. And so, they'll be there. They'll be there at the end. You know, they've got some really cool players, and I think the young coach that's there, I don't know what his name is, but I think he's finding his feet. He's you know, it's not even like a shadow has been cast on him because of like Kenny Mack and things like that. It's like there's just darkness, and that's the expectation and things like that, right? So feeling for him a lot, but I try and stand in the middle when Iverson's playing, and then I'll watch some of the other games where I can and stuff like that, and I watch some of the Scots games, and they've got an amazing team. So St. Pat's Town are rebuilding. It's tough, you know, to see such a school that was like they were back in the days. Just some of the most talented athletes have come out of St. Pat's Town and things like that. But you know, Damien's doing some good things. It's not going to be easy, you know, but I think he's got some talent there. He's got a young team, so they'll come through as well.
That's a natural cycle of things.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Every team goes through a rebuilding phase, and
like the All Blacks. No, just kidding. Let's not talk about it.
All right, we're back after a brief interruption. Here we go. So, how about we talk about Wellington Samoan basketball? That started in May of 2021, was it?
Yeah. Well, it started a little bit earlier than that, but it actually really started gaining traction in 2021.
And you are the treasurer?
I am the treasurer. Yeah.
And who is the president?
So the president is Paul Tualafata, and the secretary for Wellington Samoa basketball is Loretta. And then we've got 3 others who make up the committee, and so it's Dan Yoapo, Martin Stowers, and Bena Civilli. So some real experience there as far as basketball goes, and nice to think that we've got a real committed group of people trying to, I guess, share the story about Wellington Samoan basketball and things like that. So yeah.
Can you explain to us the why create Samoan basketball and its purpose and goals?
Yeah, well, it's twofold, right? Obviously, to provide an opportunity and maybe even a pathway for Samoans, obviously, using basketball as their vehicle. So the FIBA rules to qualify for playing for your country, you have to hold your country's passport, as an example, and you have to have held it by the age of 16. And so that kind of information is not readily available, or known for that matter, and things like that. And so let's say someone like Iverson, for example, may have wanted to represent Samoa and things like that, but he's too old now. And so what we want to be able to do is actually share this with some of our parents and the kids who are playing, just to let them know that if they want to represent Samoa, even as a New Zealand born, they need to go through the process of actually having the right paperwork, obviously having your passport by the age of 16, and then you can actually qualify to represent Samoa and things like that. It's also a way to be able to actually try and bring the Wellington Samoan basketball community together. There's so much talent out there, and it's like, how can we actually bring everyone together, because there are PI specific tournaments that get held throughout the year and things like that. So First Nations is obviously a similar concept to Hoop Nations, but it's very much targeted at the Pacifica community, so Tonga, Fiji, obviously Samoa, Niue, the Cook Islands, stuff like that. So it's really neat. Ethan played last year, and like the team that he played for, which wasn't Wellington Samoan basketball, they won. And I think what I loved the most about it was, as a people, and it's not just Samoa, it's most Pacifica, the colour and the atmosphere and the vibrance that goes on with it and things like that. Basketball just happened to be the vehicle that actually brought everyone together, and I think that was really, really special. For me, as far as Wellington Samoan basketball goes, it's actually the other side of it. What I'm excited about the most, and what actually draws me most to it, is using that as an opportunity to provide more awareness for our community. So like if the intention is that we will have basketball runs for the kids, where they'll come and do training, where they'll come and actually hang out with some friends and things like that. But I think for me, what was also pretty awesome to be able to think that we're going to be able to offer is just opportunities to be able to get parents together as well. I think about the talented parents that I've been fortunate to come across and meet and things like that, and it's like, how do we share their stories? It's I think as a Pacifica culture, we're very quick at actually looking at other people and saying, oh, you did amazing and things like that. That's really, really cool, and maybe not always so self-reflective, and actually trying to appreciate some of the amazing things that we've done as well and things like that as individuals. And so what I'd love to be able to actually do is have sessions where we get some talented Samoans who've actually done some great things and actually shared that. But it's not, for me at least, it's not about the talented sports people, because there are so many, and you hear their stories a lot anyway. It's about like the people even within our committee who are constables, who've joined the New Zealand Police and done some amazing things in the community and things like that. It's about people who are working in the Ministry of Health, and actually, what is it that that might be able to support our community, raise awareness and raise education as far as what's out there for not just Samoan communities but for everyone. And it's just maybe it's just not information that's easily as accessible for our parents and things like that. And then we've also got business owners, things like that. So Dan, who is one of our coaches, he owns South Coast Construction, and You know, even things like that. I think it's pretty important to celebrate. And if, for me, being purely selfish, if basketball's the reason why we come together, then let it also be a reason why we can share some success stories within our community. And that's the thing that excites me the most. I think it's the sharing of stories. The intention is to also bring in people who might be able to share about well-being. You know, when we talk about our young kids, there's so many things that go on in their lives and things like that. And you know, as a dad of two, I know that I don't have all of the answers and things like that. And Ethan and Iverson, I feel I have a great relationship with them and things like that. They're great kids. I don't know if they think that they've got a great dad, and that's okay, because as long as they're talking to someone, that's what I want the most and things like that. And so for me, it's how do we actually tear down what were previously taboo subjects to talk about and things like that. You know, how can we actually encourage our young people to talk? How can we encourage our older people to be able to actually communicate and share, you know, some of the stuff that they've got going on in their space and things like that as well. It's a work in progress. It's not quite where we want it to be, but certainly the platform has been set, and we're starting to make some pretty neat steps in towards the right direction, I feel. So, yeah.
That's a great thing. Are Pacifica people underrepresented in the world of basketball? Is it hard for young Pacifica ballers to break into the industry?
I feel like certainly from as a spectator and a fan, obviously with Alpha League, high school basketball, and even watching some of the maybe not quite the NBL, but that's where I'm maybe getting to. There are so many gifted and talented Pacifica players, both male and female. Mm-hmm. When you watch, like in Alpha League as an example, or even when you watch at high school, they're just listed in every single team and things like that, and I love seeing that. But then when you get to the next level and things like that, it's not quite as prominent and things like that. But I also wonder if it's a reflection of cost. Yep. You know, it's part of Wellington Samoan basketball is, and we're not going to be able to do it all of the time. I don't think anyone's expecting that we do it all of the time and things like that. But one of the main barriers is obviously cost. Yeah. And what we've always wanted to do is how do we actually remove as many barriers as possible to make the sport accessible. And, you know, being able to actually say to parents and to kids, you know, here's something that we've been able to do, whether it's through funding or whether it's through sponsorship. You know, just bring your kids and stuff like that, and let them enjoy basketball. Perfect example of that, going back to Dan, is that a few weeks back we had the Matariki tournament that Capital Basketball held, and part of the I guess the things that we've always wanted to do is how do we represent ourselves? How do people know that that's actually Wellington Samoan basketball, that's actually out on the court at the moment and things like that. And naturally that's all part of a uniform and things like that. Yep. So we were very lucky. You know, Wellington Samoan basketball paid for a set of uniforms, but also South Coast Construction, which is Dan's, sponsored a set of uniforms as well. And so that's not as widely known as I'd hoped that it was. Mm-hmm. But it's also one of those things where we didn't ask for parents to actually pay for uniform and things like that, right? And then that removed a barrier. That removed a restriction maybe on, well, yeah, I absolutely want my kid to play for Wellington Samoan basketball, but right at the minute, that's a decision over, you know, $120 for a uniform, or $120 that goes to something that's actually more family oriented, which is totally important, right? And that should be priority. We're not saying that it shouldn't. And so we're not going to get them all right, and we're not going to be able to remove all of the barriers, certainly, but the intention is to try and actually remove as many as we can, as often as we can, mm-hmm. With the intention of being able to encourage as many of our young people to actually come in and just ball out. Yeah. equally, for some of the older age group and things like that, could we do the same thing for them as well? If we have open men's or open women's team, how do we make it as easy as we possibly can? And I think for me, when I think about men's basketball, like if we were to send an invite out for an open men's team, we'd get heaps of guys coming, I want to represent Wellington Samoan basketball and things like that. The women's side of it is a little bit more challenging, and so how do we remove the barriers for our women and things like that to make sure that they actually feel like that they can actually get involved? But that's a piece of work that I know that even you've tried to work on and things like that. And so for us, it's the, what is it that's preventing some of our exceptionally talented women to actually come in and ball out and things like that and play basketball? And so, like you, we continue trying to work on that piece of the jigsaw and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, continues to be a work in progress for us as well.
What have been some of the difficulties and surprises of trying to create your own Samoan association?
All right. This is potentially going to be controversial. Maybe not. The intention is always good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you hope for is that you will get support, whether it's from the community or whether it's from people that you reach out to just to actually ask questions.
Yeah.
And what I found is some of the people that I've reached out to ask questions around, how have they built their infrastructure to ensure that it actually is sound, that you're ticking all of the boxes that are required and things like that. Particularly if you're going to register as a charity or an incorporated society and things like that, right? Just gives yourself a little bit of substance, and then you can actually go out there and you can actually say, okay, cool, this is what it is, and this is our community and stuff like that. I think one of the hard parts is actually sometimes feeling like those who you're trying to provide for are the ones that are trying to pull you down and things like that. But I know that that's not unique to just Wellington Samoan basketball. I know that I think even with, I think a conversation that we've had sometimes with Alpha, it's been a little bit like that as well, and things like that, right? You trying to provide something good. The intention is to actually make sure that you do well. For us, we haven't always delivered as well as what we've wanted to and things like that, but all we hope for is that our community understands the intention is always good. Mm-hmm. The heart is there to make sure that we're actually providing a product and things like that. And again, volunteers, none of us get paid to do this kind of stuff, and so we're trying to juggle that with family, with our own actual, this is what I do to earn a crust so that I can provide for my family and things like that. Wellington Samoan basketball is actually just something that I'm passionate about. And like I said, we're not always going to get it right. But it doesn't help when you get the people who are saying, oh, why'd you do that, and how come you didn't do this, and things like that. So yeah, certainly that's been a challenge. And I think outside of that, it's just having that continuity, listening to the people and things like that, right? The intention of Wellington Samoan basketball was actually more just when there's a tournament, we'll reach out to people who might want to represent Wellington Samoan basketball and then go out and actually play. What we realised was that actually that's not what people wanted. The majority of our people actually wanted there to be regular training runs and things like that. And so the discipline was for us to be able to actually make sure that we were listening. And we might have thought, is that what we really want? Things like that. But actually, the learning became, it's not so much what we want, it's what is it that the community wants, and if we can deliver that, then let's do that. If we can't, then let's communicate that. Otherwise, you're actually opening yourself up to the, why don't you do this, why don't you do that, and so, you don't want to be the creators of your own kind of like grief and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's been a long process, I feel, and we've still got a long way to go. And I think there will always be the haters, for the lack of a better term, and things like that, right? And I think it's just us needing to continue to have that thick layer of, resilience towards that particular piece of it, and actually always remembering why do we set this up for in the first place and things like that. And I think if we can do that, then we'll continue to succeed and things like that. So. Still some work to do, but we're getting there.
I think any entity or organization that is whether it's starting up or whether it's been around for ages, there's always going to be criticism or people that don't like you, or you can't please everybody. That's the way I look at alpha. Is people are gonna, no matter what I do,
it's not gonna be for everyone.
Yeah. And but one of the greatest things I heard in regards to alpha is one of the players told me that what you build, and you hit it on the head right there, is when you have good intentions and you put hard work into it and you put out a good product, and you will make mistakes. You will make, and Alpha certainly made a lot of mistakes, but that is what Kiwis respect, and that is what draws Kiwis into liking your product, and that's all you need to do. And and I do take it as a compliment, because that's what we try to do. But like you said, you can't please everybody.
No.
I mean, it's not just, doesn't go just for business. In your relationships and life, your social life. I mean,
absolutely.
It's just that's just the way human relations are.
I think that's it. It's surrounding yourself with good people who have the same intentions, who have the same passions, and have the same motivation. And then, it's making sure that you're supporting each other to, not let this over here impact too much about what you actually want you to do. But
it's not the practice; it's the people behind the practice.
100. Yeah, it's a good one.
One thing I want to get into is behavior.
Let's do.
I've seen you come to a lot of alpha games when Ethan and Iverson are playing, and you've never yelled at a ref. At least not that I heard. Or a ref has never complained about you. But one thing that's really caught me by surprise is, since I've started alpha, I've seen, and I've also heard stories, in college sport, even see it in the midweek leagues, you see it in Intercity, where parents are berating officials, or players are not acting respectful, and even coaches. And you see coaches, and I do understand it's part of the game. Adrenaline is running. Parents want to see the best for the children, but it's quite surprising, because Alpha's lost some referees over the years, and I've heard some referees have quit because you don't get paid much, and you're just getting abused. And Ethan and Iverson have always been one of the two of the most respectful players that I've ever seen at Alpha. And I see the way that you and your partner come and watch them, and never just a class act family. And I'm just wondering your views on, is that important to you as a family in terms of basketball, how to behave?
Yeah, it's look, I'd be lying if I said that there weren't times where I'd like slipped, and I'd given referees grief, and always regretted it, because it's that you and I talked about it, is that if they were to stop and actually look at me and say, well, do you want a ref? I wouldn't, 100% I wouldn't. And then I think to myself, if that was someone giving Ethan or Iverson a hard time on the sidelines and things like that, how would I feel like as a dad, because that's my son and things like that. And a referee is somebody's child. I think it's a reflection of our society when you walk around ASB or even high school gyms, and they've purposely made signs that say, this is just a game, these are just referees, you're not in a world championship and things like that, and literally it's telling you don't be a dick kind of thing. And that's not new, and it's tough, right? I legit have to give credit to Ethan and Iverson, probably more Ethan, because there will be times on the sidelines where he can feel that I'm like starting to get a little bit triggered and things like that, and he'll look at me, and I think I'm super grateful for the relationship that I have with my kids and stuff like with both of the boys, because they'll look at me and they'll be like, and I know that actually it's not for me to question like the referees and things like that, and Ethan particularly in his teams that he's been involved in, where he's had a leadership role, whether it's he's the captain or just one of the players that's on the floor that's been a leader. I think for the most part he's been pretty cool. He's been respectful to referees. I feel like I might have seen one time where he'd let it get to him and things like that. And I think it was just like everything, right? It was a critical moment in a game and things like that. And I know that he regretted it later and things like that. But I think for the main, he's been super respectful. But I also think for him, he's very lucky because he's played college basketball in the US, and that's the stuff that they don't accept, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's just like the referees are well regarded, they're well respected and things. And you know, for him, it was just like small town kid from Wellington in New Zealand. Who the actual hell am I to even think that I have a right to raise my voice at referees and the NCAA college system and things like that. And so he came back home with this real maturity about him as far as basketball, and not just the way that he played it, but certainly the way that he actually interacted with officiators and stuff like that. And so, yeah, but do we have a problem? 100. Like, if I go back to Wellington College basketball, trying to find a referee for a Tuesday night junior game is nigh impossible.
Yeah. But we're having trouble as well.
That's really sad, yeah. And I know that even on a Friday night at College Sport Wellington, I've seen like the floor manager struggling to find referees for games, and that shouldn't be happening, but it is. And a lot of it is because what you've raised, right, is behaviours of, you know, spectators, whether you're a parent or a sibling or a family member or just a mate and things like that, right? It's tough. It's tough. I don't know if they could pay me enough to be a referee and things like that, right? Because, you know, it's a tough gig. But I know that it's not just basketball.
Yeah.
Being involved in Wellington College basketball, you talk to some of the other codes and, you know, you hear the same challenges. It's just like, why would somebody, you know, particularly our young people, why would they actually expose themselves to, you know, sideline abuse and things like that? And that's what it is. And it's sad that that's what we've come to. You know, it's a challenge in itself to try and actually encourage people to play, you know, sports in a way where they don't feel like they're getting completely, you know, have all of their motivation and their self, you know, belief taken out of them, to then have a referee actually have that as well. It's tough. It's real tough.
I mean, it happens everywhere, though. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I'm just saying it's only happening in Wellington. It happens in the States as well. It's just the degree I've seen here.
It's insane, right?
Is a lot more than I've ever experienced in the States. And I know with an alpha, or at least I assume in alpha that I try to protect the referees as much as possible. Yeah. And I know some players think that maybe I'm a little too strict, but I try to tell people, not just players, but just even parents and, you know, coaches and stuff like that, is when you do that, when you behave in that way, when you disrespect the referee or abuse them, you're not benefiting anyone. No. Because what you're doing is you're actually hurting the game. Because if you chase that referee, especially if it's a potentially good referee, from the game, then you're just hurting the sport.
Absolutely.
And I think that's selfish, and I think people don't realize that maybe. And I understand things get in the heat in the moment, and I love how you mentioned your son's team, Ethan, because what I liked about them was they never behaved in a way that I felt was disrespectful. But when they did question calls, and they would come to me after games or go to the refs and talk.
Yeah.
And that's all a referee or any official asks, is you talk to them and, you know, just have whether it's a debate, whether it's an argument, or whether it's, you know, giving back feedback. Yeah. It's just talk to them in a respectful way, and they will respond to you. Yeah. And that's one thing I really always liked about Ethan's teams, whether it be OVO Legends or Trench Brothers. Yeah. And I know, you know, sometimes the calls didn't go the way and they'd get frustrated, but they never did anything that was unacceptable, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a learning in there for spectators, right? And I'm sure it wasn't just Ethan and his squads. There's some really nice teams and some great kids playing in Alpha League. There really, really are. I think of the Stevens brothers, obviously Nico, Lucien, you know, just really neat kids. You know, kids that have they're not kids anymore, obviously, but like, I'm older than them, so I'll still wear.
I consider them kids.
Yeah. But to have them playing in this league and seeing them being able to express themselves without being dicks and stuff like that, I think it's pretty special. Raw Dogs aren't as successful as they are by accident, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're a respectful team. They play good, hard basketball and things like that. That season there, Ethan and his boys got to the finals with Raw Dogs and things like that. It was a pretty special season to watch and things like that. And then exactly what you say, you know, respectful young men that actually appreciated the opportunity they were being given. And I think there's learnings in there for us as spectators, because, I mean, who are we when we're not on the court? And so if the players are being respectful to the coaches and things like that, which for the most part, when I've watched Alpha League games, they will have.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite clear in the product that gets provided. And also in like the caliber of players, you know. I know that there was a good friend of Ethan's that a few years back got suspended from Alpha, and that set an expectation, you know, that it wasn't okay to do that type of stuff and things like that. Like, you know, brain explosion moment, I'm sure. Neat kid for the most part and things like that. And it was really nice to be able to actually see that actually when you're protecting or you are looking after referees and things like that, you kind of hope that you're now starting to build up that actually I can comfortably go and referee at Alpha League because you know, there is a process that you go through if you disagree, and also there are some very clear expectations that are set with each team and things like that, that actually, like as you've just said, you're just taking away from the game if, you know, you're running down or you're trashing referees and things like that. Just like you are as a player, you'll have moments where it won't actually work out the way that you expect it to, and referees are just the same, right?
Yeah.
I think for the main, they're doing an amazing job. And yeah, like I said, it's hard to say that, you know, others need to up their game as far as actually being spectators and things like that, when I know that I haven't been, you know, the most ideal all the time. But then when I look at some pretty special players that are on the court, they're the ones that actually need the referees the most and things like that. And so who the hell am I to actually question what a referee's doing? And so yeah, like I said, go back to Ethan, and he must feel it, like Spidey senses. He must feel his dad's going to get triggered, and he'll look at me and he'll be like, shush. And so yeah, very grateful to him. And it's moments like that that I realise that actually I'm not doing anyone any favours if I actually think that I'm going to give a referee a hard time and things like that. So yeah, certainly as a basketball community, we've got a lot to work on to make sure that this game that everyone loves and stuff like that.
I think it comes back to coaching as well. I mean, because you have, at least sometimes what I forget is you're dealing with young people, young players. Players are not, you know, when you have someone who's 26 or under, I mean, those are young adults. Or even if you have teenagers and and sometimes you forget that, and you know, it comes down to coaching first. Coaches need to instill that, as well as parents, I think, when they're young. And then maturity takes over after that. But sometimes I do forget that some of these players are only 21, 22, 23, and that is young. And you know, if it's different when a player is 27 or older, then you know, they shouldn't be acting that way.
You've been around the block a little bit, man.
But it's just an interesting thing that I've noticed, and I'm always curious to hear different people's opinions about in terms of basketball in Wellington. Yeah,
we certainly have some work to do. We certainly have some work.
Well, everyone does. I mean, I've seen some pretty piss poor behavior in the States, especially with soccer. Oof, man, the parents in soccer.
Really?
Soccer, and if you go to the Midwest or South of America in terms of American football, woo, that
passionate.
It's their life. So it's their life, and that can get pretty nasty. I mean, Yeah, I've never seen anything worse than that. But I also know that European soccer can be pretty rough as well, at least from what I hear in terms of professional leagues.
Yeah. They get pretty ruckus at
Yeah.
like in the EPL kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And they've had incidences and stuff like that.
So I mean, it happens everywhere. It's just
Yeah.
unfortunate, and I think people need to just. My opinion is you need to look at the overall picture of what your behavior does to the game.
100%.
All right, I just want to finish up this on a questionnaire that I think I'm going to start doing for every interview, just
Sure.
to end it. And it's a questionnaire that French TV personality Bernard Pivot used to ask, but I've changed it up a little bit, and I'll ask you a series of questions
Okay.
where people get to know you just a little bit more. And just for the viewers, he hasn't been given these questions, so this is off the top of his head.
Okay.
If you take too long, I'll edit it out to make it just shorter. But-
Cheers.
All right. Question 1. What is your favorite word?
Blessing.
Blessing. What is your least favorite word?
Suicide.
Suicide. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Ethan and Iverson.
What turns you off?
I think because they play such a significant part in here and here, not much. Just, I think emotions, creativeness come from the love that I have for these two blessings that I've got, kind of thing. And so I've always been a find the good type of person, and so there's not much time for like things that won't be good. So,
That's a great answer. What is your favorite curse word?
Ah, fuck.
Is that
Totally
it? Is
that.
Yeah. What sound and noise do you love?
What sound?
Or noise do you love?
Laughter.
Oh. What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
Ooh. So I work in banking, and if money wasn't an issue, I would love to be involved in young people and their talents, not just basketball, not just sport. But what I've learned is that taking a young person and their talents and their gifts is a family thing, you know, and my learnings as a dad, a lot of it has come from Ethan and Iverson and things like that. But I also hope that their learnings as young men and young athletes and young academics and things like that have come from their mum and dad as well and things like that. But that's not always kind of like gelled very well together. Yeah. And what I'd love to actually be able to do is actually just sit with them and just say, hey, look, you're super gifted and things like that, but don't forget that it's your mum and dad that are actually providing you the opportunities, but equally as mum and dad, this is them, and you need to be able to allow them to actually express themselves and grow, and actually there will come a time where you need to be able to let go. And for us, letting go was Ethan going to the US and things like that, and that was tough. It was real tough. But yeah, it's there's a lot of super talented young people out there, and I'd love to think that I could be an outlet for them to talk to, but equally for their parents to talk to as well and things like that. Not because I'm knowledgeable, just because I can listen. I'm good at listening. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. What is your idea of happiness?
Yeah, my voice.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. What is your favorite NBA team?
Whoa. That's tough. Historically, the Bulls.
Okay.
Historically, the Bulls, but I think at the minute the team that I love watching the most is probably the Suns.
Okay.
And I say the Suns because I'm a huge fan of Devin Booker.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your most memorable basketball game or experience?
Watching via live stream Emory and Henry College win their first ever ODAT championship.
Okay.
That was just happens to be the year that Ethan was a freshman there, and we were watching it at home in Kurori, and as soon as that final buzzer went, like they were up by 2, and like there was actually a half-court heave that legit hit the back of the rim, and I was like, my heart sank. And as soon as the buzzer went, it was just, there were tears, we were screaming around the house and things like that. And yeah, it was that real moment of, you know, having one of our sons experience something like that was pretty special, and having Iverson there to join you all to experience that with us, I think so was really cool as well. So yeah, definitely that.
That's cool. All right, two more. What is your favorite film?
The Book of Life.
The Book of Life. All right.
Yep, it's animated movie. So, yeah.
And last question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I was a good dad.
Great answer. Thank you very much for joining us on these multiple occasions and
Yes,
multiple interruptions. We finally made it through, but I really appreciate it, and it was a great interview.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate you, Mike.
Yep.
Thank you.